Welcome once again to Chelan County Connection. I'm your host, Randy Rhodes. Today, our guest, Chelan County Coroner Wayne Harris. Wayne, how are you?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Hey, we're glad to have you back on the podcast today. You announced, Wayne, earlier this year some big news. You're retiring after nearly 20 years. Congrats on the retirement. By the way, and when is your last day?
Well, thank you for that. My last day is December 31st of this year. January 1st has always been my favorite holiday, college football bowl games. So, what a wonderful way to start my retirement.
So, Wayne, you're leaving the county after serving 5 terms. 5 terms. Now, you were appointed in 2006 in the springtime and then elected in 2007. What made you run for an elected office anyway?
Well, I was in the funeral industry for about 15 to 18 years. I was a licensed funeral director and embalmer. When I worked in the Valley in a funeral home, I was also a deputy coroner for a few years for Dr. Gina Fino, who was my predecessor. And I would take calls one weekend a month for her and her chief deputy coroner so they could get some rest. And when she announced that she was resigning so that she could move to Olympia, where her husband got a job with the Department of Health, I thought long and hard about it and decided that if I applied for the position and got it, it was another way to help grieving families in a way that I hadn't been able to do in the past.
And as far as getting into elected office, how did that strike you?
Well, it was definitely different. Everyone kept asking me, "Why do you have to run as a Republican or a Democrat? Why is it partisan?" And I was interviewed by the Republican committee. They had to pick Dr. Fino's predecessor, and that was one of the questions I asked: "Is why is it partisan?" And they said because there's a substantial budget, and they need to have transparency, and you have to be accountable to the citizens for that budget. So um, one of the gentlemen that didn't get selected as I was appointed decided to run against me. So that made me run a campaign, and I'm really glad it did because I learned how to run a campaign, and it made me appreciate the job even more.
Say, Wayne, on a very personal note, I just got to say, you're a sight for sore eyes. It's been a minute since we've had a chance to sit down.
It has, yeah. We've all got our lives, we're busy, and I just appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts and feelings as I retire.
And Wayne, as far as the position, is it what you thought it would be over these years?
It is. It's exactly what I knew it would be. Being in the funeral business for so many years and interacting with coroners and medical examiners' offices, I understood their process. Working with Dr. Fino, I understood death investigation and had a basic understanding of how death scenes are investigated. So when I did get the job, she was able to sign off on me to sit for a national board to take a week-long training national death investigator, and I was able to pass a national test and become a death investigator, and then go through continuing education, which is required to help bolster my knowledge and my experience. And so it wasn't easy, but it was very doable and not as difficult as it might have been if I was someone just coming off the street.
Chelan County Coroner Wayne Harris, our guest this time out on Chelan County Connection. One thing that is always for certain, and that is change. How has the position or the job changed in the 20 years you've been there?
Well, there's a couple things I want to highlight. One, procedural wise, but the other county wise. So when I started in 2006, I had 324 reportable deaths. In 2025, our office in Chelan County had 552 reportable deaths. So the reason that we've had such an influx is several reasons, and here's the big one. The county's growing in population, of course. People are getting older. We have wonderful recreational activities here that people can come from other counties or from other states, and they can hike the enchantments, they can rock climb, they can river raft, they can parasail or hang glide. These are high risk activities that people end up dying from. There's motorcycle fatalities. That causes us an influx of work. An accidental death takes a lot more effort and time than a natural death. We have to go to the scene, examine the scene or examine the body at the scene, transport the body, do blood draws, test the blood. We have to do reports, do an external examination. So this is all time consuming. The other thing that has changed is there are two helicopter companies now, medevac companies. If an accident occurs in another county, they're flown to Central Washington to receive care. Most of the time, they're very traumatic injuries, and the patient may not live past the emergency room, and so those are reportable to us. We have to investigate the individual because a primary doctor won't sign it. Emergency room doctors don't sign death certificates, so that's our role to do that. The other reason that we're busier is, like I said, more people are moving here and the older people are passing away in their homes. Home deaths are reportable to us. They're natural deaths, so they don't take as much effort. Procedurally, what has changed is there are less forensic pathologists in the country. Our county was the last county of its size to have a forensic pathologist as a coroner. We had 3 pathologist coroners prior to me, Dr. Bonifaci, Dr. Rapay, and Dr. Fino. Well, I was the first, what they call lay coroner, meaning I don't have a doctor's degree. I'm not a doctor. So everyone thought the wheels were going to come off, but what we would do is contract with the traveling forensic pathologist who would come over here and do autopsies. Well, there are no more traveling pathologists. And with 500 certified pathologists in the nation, most of them work at medical examiners' facilities. So we take our bodies to King County Medical Examiner's office in Seattle, where we contract with them. They perform the autopsies, give us the results, and then we provide that information to the family and sign the death certificate. We have to take the bodies over, wait for the autopsy, bring the bodies back. That's an all-day event. So that's a big change. When there were medical examiners' offices not taking outside cases, we didn't have an option for autopsies. So the commissioners were really good to work with us, and they purchased what's called a Randox multi-stat evidence machine. It allowed us to test the blood of an individual who we know to be a drug overdose. We can get a positive result in the office within an hour, and then we send the remainder of the blood out to be tested. So we didn't have to hold the body until we got the toxicology results back. So that's been a big change and a big asset. And the other big asset was not getting autopsies. We had to pivot, and I met with and talked to a company. It's a forensic radiology company. We take bodies to the hospital. They do full body CT scans. Images are uploaded to the forensic radiology company, and they're able to provide us a report. And certainly it's not for every case, but it can be for cases that might need an autopsy, but it wouldn't necessarily, but we still need some type of internal examination, and that CT scan is very vital in helping us rule out injuries and also give us causes of death. So those are the big changes that we've seen.
Wayne, you and I have spoken before about, certain challenges of attracting young people to that career of a coroner. What do you think is holding people back from becoming a coroner?
Well, in the 90s when CSI was a big thing on TV, it was glamorous. Everyone, and death was always a mystery. No one really knew much about funeral homes or death investigation until CSI came out, and it looked like an interesting job. People were getting into it, and they were realizing it's not as glamorous as they thought it would be. It's very time consuming. It's not a clean occupation. We're at scenes that are hazardous, and it's an emotionally draining career. You have to go to a home and knock on the door at any time of the day or night and tell a loved one, their husband or wife or loved one was just killed in an automobile accident. And that is very emotional and very difficult to do. One of the toughest part of the job is doing a death notification. So I think that dissuades a lot of people from getting into the career.
All right, our guest this time out, welcoming Chelan County Coroner Wayne Harris to Chelan County Connection. Now, Wayne, you've had a memorable career. You're currently, and I've heard this all around, one of the most popular elected officials in Chelan County.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
well, looking back, any special memories you'd like to share?
Well, first of all, I have enjoyed meeting people and working with the other county employees. I've enjoyed working with law enforcement, fire department, the hospital staff. Those have all been enjoyable. I've enjoyed helping families. That's the big thing that I can take away is you meet people in their worst time and you're able to comfort them or help them until they can get some other resources to help them emotionally. So that's been very rewarding. Uh, the other, the best part of my job is reuniting the remains of a dead individual or a loved one with family. So there are a lot of times where we have an individual in Chelan County who is homeless. We may or may not know who they are for a while. We find out who they are. We don't know where their family is. Or we have somebody that dies in the county. We know who they are, but we don't know who their next of kin is. So there are a few resources that we utilize that we can most likely, in all cases, find family somehow, and they use public records to find next of kin. And when I make the call, or sometimes I even have to mail a letter, and they call me, the most rewarding thing is them telling me they've been looking for that individual for years, and they're grateful that I took the time to reach out and notify them. We had one family who hired a private detective for about 15 years to find their brother, and they could never find him. They even bought their mother's home because he was the favorite uncle, and they had a hope that one day he would return to his sister's house, knock on the door, and the nieces would live there and be able to reunite with him. So when I was able to mail the urn back to them and families get the remains back where the remains need to be, it's such a relief for them, and I just feel good about taking the time to do that and reuniting families and giving them answers.
You know, Wayne, that's got to be most rewarding.
It is, yes.
Say, as you retire, what do you hope you're leaving with the position? For example, I know you're kind of modest, but what impacts do you think you've made?
Well, like I mentioned a minute ago, I think the CT scans and the Randox machine were two big things that we were at a position where during COVID and after COVID, where these coroner medical examiners offices just could not take outside autopsies. And that was the biggest tool in death investigation taken away from me. And how do you go to a family and say, I can't get you an autopsy? There are no independent pathologists in the state. They're hard to come by. And so we would have to rely on medical records, and we would have to rely on blood if it was an overdose. Now, in a certain case, if it was a homicide or an infant, we absolutely had to have an autopsy. So we would call the different medical examiners and plead our case. The farthest we went with one is Bremerton. Kitsap County Medical Examiner took a case for us. So those were difficult decisions we had to make, and finding a way around not getting autopsies was something that we had to do, and that was the CT scan and the Randox machine. So I feel really grateful that we were able to pull that off and leave that tool with the next coroner.
Say, Wayne, a little bit of a fun fact that our director Jill had shared with me, and we want to share with our viewers. Under state law, the coroner is the only elected official in a county that can arrest a sheriff. What gives with that?
Well, that's a law that came from Old England when the coroner system was set up in the United States. They used the Old English law to because um, I don't want to go into all the details. It takes too long, but the king would get taxes on deaths, and so families would bargain with the death investigator, who were sheriff apparently, and they would collude and they would take a cut. If they say it's a natural death, the king wouldn't get as much as it was a homicide. So the king had to appoint a coroner or crowner to investigate deaths for him, and so apparently the law enforcement were not up on the up and up. So the coroner had the ability to arrest the sheriff or sheriffs, and that law just passed over here. And but it's interesting to note that that's probably never happened, to arrest the sheriff, and it's very rare. When people tell me that, I say I don't want to arrest him. I just want to tase him.
You know, I love word origins, and you said crowner, and
Yes,
that's where coroner came from then.
that is correct.
Say, Wayne, who's going to be replacing you?
Well, the only individual that applied was my coworker, my chief deputy coroner, Earl Crow. I assume the commissioners will appoint him.
So you're leaving with actually a year left on your term. So someone will have to run for election next year. That's likely
Yeah,
Earl, yeah.
that is correct. Earl has expressed interest. He will run for election. Um, when I was appointed, I ran for election, like I mentioned, and somebody ran against me, and then I was uncontested all those election cycles after that. Earl may or may not have someone run against him, but he will have to run for election next year.
So then Earl's been kind of an understudy or protege under you. How do you think he's going to do?
Oh, he'll do wonderful. He's very detail oriented, takes his job serious. He's had a lot of experience. He worked at another coroner's office before he came here. I don't think there'll be any misstep at all.
You know, you mentioned a little bit earlier, Wayne, that you often interact with families at some of the worst of times. As you depart the position and you leave Chelan County, can you share any advice for someone that would, maybe want to be a coroner or our Chelan County coroner?
Yes, I believe that the first thing they need is a lot of patience, a lot of understanding. Somebody that's grieving can be very irrational, and you need to listen and be patient. And the individual that is applying for the job or wants to be the coroner has to have a large measure of compassion, because you've met that person on their worst day. And every death notification I've made, every individual has reacted differently, from not talking to crying to dropping on the floor and screaming and yelling. Every individual is different, and you have to have patience and compassion. And I believe my time in the funeral industry helped me understand grieving people. So that was something I I like to do personally, so that I could help them through that difficult time.
Wayne, I want to say I'm very grateful to have gotten to know you a little bit during your career as our county coroner, and just grateful to have this time together today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But before we let you go, before we cut you loose, what can you tell us about some of your retirement plans?
Well, I really want to get a part-time job. I don't know how many days a week I will work. I like people. I like to visit with people, and so I don't know, I might be a courier. I'll probably do something. I won't make a decision right away. I'll wait a few months. I'd like to golf more than once a year. I haven't golfed much lately. I want to take more motorcycle vacations. We have grandkids. I want to spend much more time with my grandchildren. Um, Not being on call anymore when there's family events or family dinners. I won't be able to say I can't go, I'm on call.
Well, Chelan County Coroner Wayne Harris, thank you from all of us for your awesome service over 20 years with Chelan County. You will be missed. We wish you well in retirement, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure serving, and I've really enjoyed working with people. Thank you.